Hey, this is Matt. Thanks for joining me for the second episode of the podcast. Thank you guys for the wild success on the first episode. We just broke 140 views. That's absolutely crazy to me. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys a brief overview of what's going on in the market right now. Also, I'm going to be giving you guys my insights on how I pick out my own individual stocks, so be sure to stay tuned. Alright, so that gets me into my first topic for today, the CBOE Volatility Index. So, volatility is pretty much a measure of fear in investors in the market. So, pretty much, the higher that number is, the more fear investors have, and that means that they're more reluctant to sell out of their stocks because they'd rather hold on to cash than stay for the wild ride of the stock market. So, pretty much, right now the CBOE volatility index is at 61.00, and this isn't really dollars. This is more of just an arbitrary number that people use over time to compare how it's doing. So pretty much in normal times it's relatively flatline. So here you could see as I'm moving across, it's relatively flat, but around March, the coronavirus is really gaining a lot of traction in the United States, and a lot of people are getting very scared. So all of a sudden, you see a huge skyrocket to about what's now 61 points, but before it was 82 at its high. And that pretty much correlates to the overall market. So here I have a graph of the S&P 500, and that's pretty much the top 500 American companies that are in the United States stock market. And pretty much if you look at this graph over the past year, it's relatively flat, increasing, and boom, this huge fall happened right here. Now most people get scared and they try selling out, but that ultimately goes back to market timing because they think that they could beat the market, which I talked about last episode, which isn't going to work. So right now, you're eating up huge losses, which I believe the percentage is around 30% just over the last month alone. So anything that you own in the stock market is down on average 30%. And that's really crazy. So people are seeing this, and instead of thinking rationally, saying, hey, when this whole thing is over, it'll go back up. Instead, they're like, no, I want to get out now before it goes down even more. Now, just to reiterate, I'm just making this clear that I have no idea what's going to happen for the future. Could the stock market go down more? Yes, obviously. It probably will. We might have bottomed out, but we might not have. And I have honestly zero clue, but I know for sure that as long as the world does not end from the coronavirus, that we will be in a better spot economically after this whole thing than before this whole thing. And here's my reasoning why. What happens when people are quarantined and they're sitting in their house all day doing nothing? They're bored. They get bored. All they want to do is go outside, see their friends, and do things. And when you're doing things, most of the things that you're going to be doing, you're going to be spending money. So when you're spending money, companies are going to be making money, and that's going to reflect in their stock price. But for some reason, people are so scared now that they think that the whole world is going to end, and they pull everything out of their stocks. And now, if the market goes back up to where it was even before this huge run up here to let's say 3,000, then they're losing out on all this money coming back up. But for some reason, they think that the rationale is that they can be smarter than everybody else and get out before this whole problem is going. And new investors are even scared. But new investors should be happy right now because, if anything, the stock market is at a discounted price. So I don't remember where I actually heard this, I guess, analogy, but I was listening somewhere and somebody said that let's say you go into a car dealership and you find your favorite car in the world and everything works perfectly fine. And you say, no, I'm gonna go tour other dealerships, I'm gonna look at other cars. And then you come back a full month later and the car is 30% off. Are you gonna buy that car? And this was the car that you wanted to buy originally. Yes, you're going to buy it, right? So that could be the same thing with stocks, except right now everybody's panicked over the coronavirus, which in my opinion, there's no real need to past once this thing is over. And on average, the stock market ends up 7% a year. So if anything, we might take the hit this year, but we might grow even faster than 7% next year or the year after that to make up for it. So what I don't understand is why people are so scared. yes, it is a scary time right now, but I think that people need to understand that as long as you're not somebody who lives off of this money right now and you're not using it for your variable expenses like food, utilities, and your housing bills, just overall, there is no need to be scared, especially for people like me. I've been talking to some of my friends, and some of my friends are selling out of the stock market right now, and I'm thinking to myself, why? You have nothing better to do with that money besides sit and or I mean, yeah, you could spend it, but you have nothing better to do than sit on that money and make it grow, right? So I don't get why people are really freaking out over this whole thing, at least on the economic side, because yeah, we might lose a couple impulse buys. Yeah, people might not be buying things like coffee anymore. They might be making it at home, right? So those stocks you might have to adjust for. But stocks like Disney, Netflix, anything that you're doing at home, you think for streaming services, people aren't going to be streaming when they're sitting at home all day doing nothing? If anything, shouldn't they be seeing a surge in their subscribers? Shouldn't they be doing better now? And there's going to be better times for the future, and I just don't think that people really see that. And so now is a really good time to buy in. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about is what types of companies you guys should be looking into purchasing. So right here, I pulled up on Yahoo Finance, the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio from the most legendary investor ever, Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett's strategy is simple. You invest in strong companies with strong futures and you just hold them. That's it. You just sit and do nothing and you just grow with them, right? So I think that that's the most effective strategy to take right now because if you invest in strong companies, they won't be hit by the coronavirus as hard as some of the other companies that are barely struggling to survive. So you have more of a chance of living out with these companies for the long run than you do a more risky company. So right here, if you look at this portfolio, this is the most legendary investor. Look at what companies he's picking. Apple, Amazon, Johnson& Johnson, Procter& and Gamble, Wells Fargo, UPS, Amex, Goldman Sachs, PNC. You guys should know all these companies. Delta Airlines, SiriusXM. You guys should understand that it's really not that hard to pick successful stocks. You just have to pick solid companies and grow with them. As long as you sit on a stock, like I showed you guys last time, if it grows at 7%, you'll go from the $50,000 to 5.7 million, whatever the example that I gave you last time was on the Google Sheet, right? It's not that hard. Right now, just stay in good companies and you will be fine. Yes, you might lose money now, but if you don't need that money right now, who cares what it's doing? Who cares if it drops 50%? If next year it's up 100%, 200%, who cares? Right? That's the mentality that we should be having. And right now, everything is discounted. So the odds of it dropping are very slim. Like, it can still drop, right? Don't get me wrong. The stock market dropped like crazy just out of nowhere. And every time that you think things are going to go well, like where it rebounds here and then it goes back down, and then it rebounds and then it goes back down, right? And then it goes back down and then it rebounds, right? It still can go down. But as long as you're not panicked and you're not trying to time the market, you will be fine long term. All right, so just to add on to what I was saying in that last segment, look at what happened in 2008. 2008, one of the worst recessions that we've had in our recent times, right? The stock market drops, right? And you sell out, let's say right here at this bottom point because you get scared about what the future could be. And you think that it can be so bad that all of a sudden the world ends, whatever. The same case with Corona. You think that the world could end. And you sell out here. This dip right here. You look like a genius right now because the stock market is lower than when you sold. But now it rebounds and it keeps coming up for the next 8 years. And now, instead of buying in right here, you sold out right here. And now to get back in, you're going to have to buy all the way up here. All this money that you just lost out on right here because you panicked. It's the same thing that we're seeing right now. These red lines, these red bars right here, they imply that people are selling stock. So green means that people are buying, red means that people are selling. People are selling here, people are selling here, people are selling here. These two big red bars, right? People are selling. Yeah, you might be panicked now for what the future has to hold. But if it goes back up to 3,000 to 3,500 and you don't own any shares of stock, now you're going to have to pay the difference between whatever the price is for the future, let's say 3,000. Let's say it rebounds to 3,000 and you sold out right here. Now you're going to have to pay an extra $370 per one individual share that you want just because you thought that you were smart and it was going to go all the way down. Never bet against the stock market unless you have absolute firm reasoning that the world is going to end, honestly. Or the company that you're investing against is going to end, it's going to die, essentially. Because throughout history, I haven't seen the stock market go down. All I'm seeing is it's going up by the end of whatever period it is. Have you seen any period where it ends down? Because I haven't, right? So that's the mentality that you guys have to be taking with this. You have to be greedy when others are scared and scared when others are greedy. And that was directly from Warren Buffett himself. And right now, people are pretty scared from the coronavirus. So be greedy, get into the market, and yeah. Alright, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the news that came from today. So pretty much today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics dropped a report that comes out every quarter saying how many people are unemployed in comparison to the previous quarter. So pretty much today, they reported that about 3.2 million people were laid off, far more than economists expected. This number might be alarming to a few, but the smart investors who remember to not sell ended up winning in this situation. This is because today the federal government also announced that a $2 trillion stimulus plan would be implemented for people that are on the lower income end and can't afford to pay their bills. I think they said about 1,200 was going out to each adult and about $500 per kid, in an effort to get people spending. And pretty much when people are spending, companies can afford to keep their workers employed, meaning people are earning more income to spend, pretty much keeping this cycle ongoing. And as a result of this, the market on average ended up about 6.3%, signifying that there are things to be optimistic about because the government is taking action by doing things like giving money to people and cutting interest rates to encourage spending in the private sector. So hopefully everything goes well for the future, and that was the second episode of the podcast. So I wanted to thank you guys so much for staying interested in this podcast series that I'm having, and I'd love to hear any comments, questions, concerns, feedback, and recommendations for the future because I'm not really too sure where I want this podcast to actually go, like what direction. So please give me some ideas. I could do some Q&As. I could bring in people like my teachers. Whatever you guys want to see, just make sure you let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you guys. I'll see you guys next week.